For the last 40 years, the United States has been living in the gradual phase. We have treated debt as a tool, a political football, a number on a screen that doesn't really matter. We convinced ourselves that because the United States is the world's superpower, the laws of gravity don't apply to us. But in 2024, something broke. A line was crossed that history says you cannot uncross. For the first time in modern history, the U.S. government is now spending more money just to pay the interest on its debt than it spends on its entire national defense. Think about that. We are paying more to bondholders than we are to the Army, Navy, and Air Force combined. This isn't politics. This is arithmetic, and arithmetic has no mercy. Historians have identified a specific mathematical pattern that has appeared in the final days of every major empire, from Rome to Bourbon France to the British Empire. It is a point of no return called the debt spiral. 3 great empires ignored the warning signs. 3 great empires collapsed. And if you look at the data coming in for 2025, you will realize that the United States hasn't just entered the spiral. We are accelerating toward the bottom of it. To understand why 2025 is so dangerous, we first have to understand what a debt spiral actually is. It sounds complicated, but the mechanism is terrifyingly simple. Imagine you max out a credit card. To pay the bill, you get a second credit card. You use the second card not to buy food or gas, but simply to pay the interest on the first card. Then, you get a third card to pay the interest on the second. You aren't buying anything anymore. You aren't growing. You are simply feeding the beast. For a nation, the debt spiral triggers when the interest rate on the debt grows faster than the national income. It creates a domino effect. As the debt grows, investors get nervous. They demand higher interest rates to lend you more money. Those higher rates make the debt grow even faster. It is a self-feeding loop. And once it starts, it becomes a mathematical vampire that drains the life out of an economy until there is nothing left but a husk. Most people think this happens overnight. It doesn't. It hides in the shadows of prosperity. It looks like wealth right up until the moment the floor falls out. To see our future, we have to look at the ghosts of the past. Because history doesn't repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes. Let's go back to the first true superpower, Rome. In the 2nd century, Rome was the master of the world. But running an empire is expensive. They had massive infrastructure projects, a sprawling bureaucracy, and a military that needed constant funding. For a long time, they paid for this with the spoils of war. But as expansion slowed, the gold stopped flowing in. The bills, however, kept coming. The emperors faced a choice. They could cut spending, which would make the public angrier. They could raise taxes, which would make the rich angry. So they chose a third option. They decided to cheat. They began a process called coin clipping. The Roman government started mixing cheap metals like copper into their gold and silver coins. They kept the face value the same, but the actual value of the gold inside dropped. By the time of Emperor Gallienus, the silver content in the denarius had fallen from 100% to just 5%. This was the ancient version of printing money. It worked for a while. The emperors felt rich. They paid their soldiers. They built their palaces. But the market isn't stupid. Merchants realized the money was worthless. Prices skyrocketed. Hyperinflation tore the society apart. But the fatal blow came from the military. When the soldiers realized they were being paid in worthless metal, they stopped fighting. Mercenaries turned on the empire. The borders collapsed. Rome didn't fall because it was weak. It fell because it went broke. Fast forward to 1789, the Kingdom of France. France was the cultural and military superpower of Europe, but the French crown had a spending problem. They had spent fortunes fighting wars against Britain, including financing the American War of Independence. The irony is cruel. France bankrupted itself to help create the United States. By 1788, the French debt spiral had reached the terminal phase. The royal ledger shows that 50% of all government revenue was going immediately to service the debt interest. Not for the army, not for the king's lifestyle, but just to pay the bankers. When half your income goes to interest, you are dead walking. King Louis XVI tried to solve the crisis. He called the Estates General to try and raise taxes, but the people were already starving because the currency was being debased to cover the deficit. You know the rest of the story. The financial crisis became a political crisis. The debt spiral didn't end in a boardroom. It ended at the guillotine. Finally, look at the British Empire in 1945. Britain had just won World War II. They were the victors. But financially, they were a corpse. To fight the war, Britain had borrowed astronomical amounts of money. Their debt-to-GDP ratio exploded over 200%. For a century, the British pound sterling was the world's reserve currency, as good as gold. But with a debt load that high, the world lost trust. Investors began to dump the pound. Britain tried to hold on. They imposed austerity. They rationed food well into the 1950s, but the math was undeniable. The empire could no longer afford to maintain its colonies. One by one, they let them go. The final humiliation came in 1956 during the Suez Crisis, when the United States threatened to sell off British debt and crash the pound if Britain didn't back down. Britain retreated. In that moment, the British Empire effectively ceased to exist, and the American century began. 3 different empires, 3 different centuries, one identical pattern. If we abstract these stories, we can see the collapse cycle follows 5 distinct stages. The nation is productive. Debt is low and used for investment in factories, roads, and education. The growth is real. The nation becomes overconfident. It starts massive social programs or engages in forever wars. Spending disconnects from reality, but the economy is still strong enough to hide it. This is the turning point. The debt becomes so large that economic growth can no longer keep up with the interest payments. The government must borrow just to pay the bills. To keep the game going, the central bank steps in. They print money to buy the government's debt because no one else wants it. This keeps interest rates artificially low, but it kills the currency's value. The system cracks. This usually results in a hard default, hyperinflation, or a complete change in the monetary system. So, where is America today? We are not in stage 2. We passed that decades ago. We are squarely in stage 4 debasement. Let's look at the hard data. The U.S. national debt has crossed $34 trillion. But the number itself isn't the scary part. It's the speed. We are adding $1 trillion to the debt every 100 days. And here's why 2025 is the year everything changes. It's called the wall of maturity. During the pandemic, the U.S. government borrowed trillions of dollars at very low interest rates, near 0%. It felt like free money. But bonds have an expiration date. In 2025, a massive chunk of that debt matures. The government has to pay it back, but they don't have the money. So, they have to issue new debt to pay off the old debt. Here's the problem. Interest rates are no longer 0%. They are 4% or 5%. This means the government is refinancing its mortgage at triple the cost. This is why the interest payments have gone vertical. This is why we are spending more on interest than on defense. We are entering the exponential phase of the curve. Remember Rome clipping the coins? Today, we don't clip coins. We call it quantitative easing or monetizing the debt. The Federal Reserve prints digital dollars to buy U.S. treasuries. It is the exact same mechanism, just with better technology. They are diluting the value of every dollar in your savings account to keep the government solvent. It is a hidden tax on everyone who holds dollars. So, what happens next? What is the consequence? If history is our guide, the U.S. government has only 2 options left, and neither of them is good. Option 1 is a hard default. The government admits it can't pay. They tell bondholders China, Japan, and American pension funds that they aren't getting their money back. This is the nuclear option. It would instantly vaporize the global financial system. Banks would collapse overnight. Supply chains would halt. It would make the Great Depression look like a picnic. Because of this, politicians will do anything to avoid it. That leaves option 2, soft default via inflation. This is the path of least resistance. The Federal Reserve will print whatever amount of money is necessary to pay the debt. Nominally, the government pays its bills. Bondholders get their dollars back, but those dollars will be worth significantly less. This leads to a period of financial repression. We are likely heading into a decade where inflation remains stubbornly high 4%, 5%, maybe 8% year after year. Prices for food, energy, and housing will continue to climb, while wages struggle to keep up. Your savings won't be stolen by a thief in the night. They will be stolen by the slow, grinding math of negative real interest rates. Ultimately, this erodes trust in the US dollar. Just like the British pound lost its crown, the dollar's dominance is mathematically unsustainable. We are already seeing central banks around the world buying gold at record paces. They are preparing for what comes after the dollar. When empires fall, it is never slow. It is sudden, brutal, and final. But let's be clear. Collapse doesn't mean the end of the world. Rome is still there. London is still there. Life goes on, but the wealth changes hands. During these transition periods, these resets, wealth is transferred from those who hold currency and paper promises to those who hold real, tangible assets, from the creditors to the debtors, from the unprepared to the prepared. The debt spiral is a mathematical certainty. The train has left the station and the brakes are broken. We cannot stop what is coming in 2025, but you can choose where you are standing when it arrives. The era of easy money is over. The era of consequences has begun. Don't be a victim of Stage 5. In our next video, we are going to break down the ARC assets, the specific investments that have historically survived when fiat currencies collapse. If you want to survive this spiral, make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on. You won't want to miss that. I'm Economy Rewind. Thank you for watching.